So no real evidence, no spirit really, but I'm going to go 5-0 United. And
God, mate, we
yeah,
need to
that was
ship all
that
of
that
these
was
lot out. Stick them on a barge and send them somewhere else because these referees are absolutely shocking.
Biag Bonlahor, that stupid creator face prick on Talksport, was literally saying it was completely different.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Social Media Derby. We're back for another week where we've got some great topics to talk about. We're going to be going through all of the matches from this game week. Obviously, we saw Arsenal and Chelsea draw 2-2, and we saw United get a cheeky little win at Sheffield United 2-1. And so before we kick off with any of that, let's go ahead and just say thank you for everybody that is watching out there. If you're watching on YouTube, as always, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it if you can. Feel free to comment down below. For those that are listening on Spotify, Apple, or any other podcasting platform, please give us a follow and a 5-star review if you can. It will really help with engagement and just getting our podcast out to a wider audience. As always, Ant, it's nice to have you on. How you doing, mate? I'm liking the shirt
Yeah,
that
I'm
you're
doing all
wearing
right,
today.
man. I have to celebrate one team that's doing well and playing well. Although semi-final against England wasn't fantastic, but come on, the Springboks, big up. No, I'm doing all right, man. Football was interesting this week for our two teams. I don't think either one of our teams played amazing, and I think the
No, they didn't.
general level of the football this weekend wasn't fantastic. There were quite a
It,
few drab games out there.
Yeah, no, it definitely it wasn't the greatest week of football, unless you're a Newcastle fan, and then
Or
for
Villa.
some reason, or a Villa fan, yeah, if for some reason you just keep spanking teams. So, but anyway, let's get into it. We'll start out with Arsenal first. I will just start out by saying, I'm a guru / genius. And last week, when you predicted or when we were asked for predictions, I did say this was going to be a much closer game than I think a lot of other fans out there, particularly Arsenal fans, obviously. And I think maybe I was a little bit wrong in that we were going to get a smash and grab win, but the smash and grab part was definitely right because we definitely smash and grabbed a point there. What did you make of the game? Obviously, Arsenal going down 2-0. What did you think of the result in the end and the performances on both sides?
So I think it's interesting looking at a lot of the analysis I've seen online already from some of the Arsenal fan channels and influencers and stuff, and the Chelsea guys and girls. But I think it wasn't the greatest game ever. I don't think it was the best advert for the Premier League. I think Arsenal definitely played well below their level, at least the level they set last season. And I think Chelsea kind of played slightly above what we've seen over the last season from them. But I don't think they were amazing. And I've seen some Chelsea fans get very excited because obviously they've been pretty poor recently and kind of celebrate the performance and kind of describe it as a bit more of a battering than it actually was. I think they outworked you for sure. I think their midfield ran all over your midfield. And I think the Enzo, Caicedo, Gallagher trio worked really well. But I would say I don't think they did enough to win. I think they were shaky enough and they didn't play with enough assurance that I kind of always felt if Arsenal were able to get a goal back, that the tide would kind of swing pretty swiftly. And that's kind of what happened. And it was pretty much what we could see happening anyway, because I think both goalies were very shaky throughout the match. And it looked like they were basically trying to beat each other at who could be the biggest Onana impersonator throughout the whole game. And they were both just, trying to throw in as big clangers as possible. And at one point, I thought Raya had got the man of the match on that side. But Robert Sanchez, yeah, I don't know what he was doing. I don't think he looked very shaky from the beginning. And yeah, I think even though it wasn't the biggest howler you'll ever see from a goalie, when he misplaced the pass, it gave that little opportunity that Declan Rice took beautifully with that finish, and the whole game flipped on its head. But I would say, yeah, it's one of those games where if you're an Arsenal fan, you don't want to see them happen too many times, but you play that poorly and sneak a result because it's not really sustainable. And if you're a Chelsea fan, you're kind of just ruining that opportunity that you had, because I don't think they'll play up, like, for example, when you do the reverse fixture at the Emirates later in the year or next year, whenever that fixture comes, I doubt you guys will play as poorly. So for them, I think they'll miss the opportunity. They've really missed an opportunity to kind of reverse some of the fixture results that they've had against you guys and get a W. And I think in the end, 2-2. It's probably slightly harsh on Chelsea, but if it was a boxing match, I think a couple of the judges may have given it a draw result, and if they had given it to Chelsea, it would have been by a point or two. But I don't think it was as resounding a performance as some of the Chelsea fans are making out. But I do think Arsenal, you can't be happy, right? Like, what's your opinion on the game? I wouldn't be happy if I was an Arsenal fan.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was a performance that should make Arsenal fans happy, particularly at the level that we're at right now. If this was like 6 years ago, then yeah, you could probably be happy with that performance because we were absolutely dog. But in this day and age, based off of how we've been playing, let's say for the last 18-ish months, right, you'd expect to get a better result. And you've also got to take into account the fact that Chelsea have been absolutely poor for, again, the better part of a season and a bit now. I know they've had a good 3-4 results now, but that doesn't change the fact that they've got like 40 new players trying to bed into a system. And we have quite a settled team. I know we've had some injuries, but we've got a pretty settled team now with a lot of big characters that should be pulling us through games like that, and shouldn't be allowing us to drop to that level of performance. And I think one of the things that kind of stood out to me, and this might be a crazy shout, but that pitch felt really small. And I did a little bit of research. Like, Chelsea does have, or sets their pitch size to be smaller than most teams, right? So most teams tend to max out like 105 meters long and I think like 70 meters wide. And Chelsea purposefully, outside of Fulham, I think have one of the smallest pitches around. And it felt like that watching that game. It felt like they just really packed out. It was very congested, particularly in the middle of the park. They were just kind of not giving us any time on the ball. And when we don't get time on the ball in the middle of the park, we don't really have the opportunity to build up new phases of play, build up opportunities. And it felt like we just never really were able to get settled. Even in the goals that we score, like the goals that we scored against them were very jerky, like kind of random, just taking advantage of what was there. It wasn't like we were, building up beautiful phases of play and like, stringing 30, 40 passes together or something like that. It was all just like really counter-attack, quick build-up types of goals, even from Chelsea too. So from that point of view, I think Chelsea's tactics and the way that they set up and the way that their pitches are set up worked really well to do that to us. And I think they were successful for huge spells of the match. It was really just like a couple of small moments that let them down. From the attacking side of things too, they weren't amazing either, right? Like, I have to be honest, they made it dirty, brought us into the trenches, and then kind of just were beating us at that style of play for the largest portion of the game. And had it not been for Sanchez's mares and just the second goal is kind of routine to me. It is poor marking, but it's a mistake that you see made quite frequently from defenders, and it doesn't always get punished. So I think that second goal is like, maybe as a Chelsea fan, you could probably forgive it. But that first goal, Sanchez, mate, shocking. And I said at the time, I saw Ramsdale do that last year. I think it was against Southampton. He did it. We got punished for it. And that was that. And there's not much else you can really say about that. So from my point of view, overall, not happy with the result. Chelsea fans should not be screaming about that either, but I get it. You're desperate. You've been absolutely for ages. So you're just going to hang on to anything you can. I get that. But from both sides, yeah, it was definitely not a great advert for the league at all. It was a real Stoke on a Tuesday night type, or Stoke on a Monday night type of vibes.
No, it definitely was. And I think tactically though, it was in a way quite similar to the City Arsenal game in that it was very, very tactical. You could tell, and it wasn't one of those free flowing matches where styles make fights. Right? It wasn't. I don't think the two styles made a good fight in this instance. And I think that was purposefully done on Pochettino's side, and for that, I think he deserves a lot of credit. I think he outwitted Arteta in this game, and even though they didn't get the win, I think it wasn't because of any Arteta masterclass tactical shift that changed the game. I think the subs, I think Trossard coming on, I think he took that goal really well. I haven't heard too many people give him props for that because obviously it was quite, a close shot, and you would kind of expect someone to take that chance, but he kind of hit it with the outside of his right foot on the half volley or on the volley. And I think he did really well to score that. But I don't think there was like a big tactical shift in the game that got you guys back into it. I honestly believe it was one half chance mistake from Sanchez, and then you guys did kind of find your feet slightly in the game a bit more. And if you're going to knock on the door eventually, you're gonna be let in. For, especially with Chelsea. If it was City or something, I would have more belief that defensively they could withstand some pressure from you guys, maybe even Liverpool. But for a team like Chelsea, I still think they're too fragile. They needed that cushion to be able to see out the game. And as soon as you kind of narrow that down, it was always going to be a bit of a long day for them. But let's get into the performances, Johns, because we've talked about it. I think on the Chelsea side, there were quite a few good performers. I think I mentioned Gallagher was really good. I think the whole midfield was really good. I think Cole Palmer was really good as well. I think Cucurella did very well against Saka as well. I think Gusto, if you take away the last goal, I think he was very energetic, but obviously the last goal was a pretty big impact on his performance. But from the Arsenal side, who do you think were the standout best performers? Were there any? And on the worst performance side, who do you think had particularly big stinkers?
I mean, there's no standout best performers because it's not a good result, right? Like it's rare these days where Arsenal play really well and don't get a result. So if we're drawing to anyone or losing, then we ain't got any standout best performers usually. So I think if I have to choose someone, I'm probably going to choose Rice just because important goal, gets us back in the game. If he doesn't put that away so clinically, and I know everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, but it's a mistake. It's not easy to score from there. I don't care who you are. I don't care where the goalkeeper is. It's not easy to put it inside netting like he did. And that was clinical, and I like that. And I think, generally speaking, Rice always, turns up in big moments for us so far. And I can't fault his performance at all, really. Like, he wasn't... It wasn't his fault that we were getting overrun in the midfield. It wasn't his fault that we weren't performing, well. But he pulled his weight, got us the goal to get us back in the game, and that kind of changed the momentum of the match. So I'm going to give it to him. Obviously, Trossard, good finish. I would like to see him get more minutes. I feel like he's deserved it. He's been really good. Pretty much every time he's touched pitch, I think he's been really good for us this season. So I can't fault his performance at all. He got, the goal that he needed to get us back in the game, or to get us to the 2-2 draw that it ended up being. Obviously, Gabriel is, he is mad underrated. The fact that he was dropped a little bit earlier this season led everyone to think like, crazy. Oh yeah, he's crap. Like, and everyone's like talking about crazy. Like Gabriel as if he's, the bozo again. And I was like, fair enough. If this was the beginning of last season, I could get that because he hadn't shown to be a really, really good centre-back yet. And he did have a lot of clangers, bozo gene type moments where he kind of cost us goals. But after last season's performances, and I think people are really just like revising history here. And they're saying like, oh no, it was Saliba the whole time. Even when Saliba was playing in that like first, let's say 3/4 of the season, first 2/3 of the season, Gabriel was giving him a run for his money. And he was close to being, I would say he was on par with Saliba in that defense. And I know once Saliba kind of got injured, it changed. And maybe that just goes to show that Gabriel can't necessarily do it on his own. And he does rely on Saliba to also put in the good performances that he's putting in. But we shouldn't downplay the fact that he was class. I'm not saying he was world class, like unbelievable, whatever. Like some people want to make the arguments about, oh, best defender in the league, whatever. But he was a really solid, a lot of good performances, like a solid 7, 8 out of 10 every match for a large part of last season. And since he's come back in, he's been the same again. right? Like he was better than Saliba yesterday. He was better than Saliba in that match on Saturday. So I don't want to hear it about Gabriel, and I think people need to put a bit more respect on his name. You know, do all the hairline jokes you want, but have some respect for man, because he was class again yesterday. And again, people are going to be like, oh, it's a 2-2 draw against Chelsea. Yeah, but mate, it could have been worse if he wasn't playing the way he was playing.
Would have. He played really
And,
well. And I was saying that to you during the match, wasn't I? I was messaging you saying Gabriel was really he made a bunch of last ditch challenges to stop like a player going clean through 1-on-1, cleaning up other people's messes. And I have to be honest, I don't know if someone can uninherit a bozo gene, but he's having less and less clangers and having less and less moments where you go, oi, he needs to like sort himself out. Why has he done that? Like those head scratcher moments that you see from some defenders, especially a lot of the South American defenders. I can say, like, you know, people describe the way I would have described Gabriel would not be too dissimilar to how I've described players like Romero or Lissandro or those rash defenders who can be really good and you love their energy and their like passion for the game, but sometimes they don't channel it in the right way, or they just have a brain fart moment and everything goes left. And I can't remember the last time he actually had one of those moments, which is a great testament to him. And I think you're right. I agree with you, man. People underrate him or they overrate Saliba a little bit, so then he loses a bit of the shine. And don't get me wrong, Saliba's on course to be a really, really top class centre back, but that doesn't mean you can't put respect on Gabriel. And I do think they both help each other, because when Gabriel's not there, Saliba also doesn't look the same, and when Saliba's not there, Gabriel doesn't look the same. And I think he actually played really well yesterday, in spite of all the craziness going on around him. Because I think if we touch on the worst performers, we'll mention other people in his defensive line. Like Raya was all over the shop, right? Zinchenko had to get hooked at half time. He was poor again. So he's still been doing well despite that kind of a bit of uncertainty, I think, that's come into your back line this season. He's still been performing really well. So you have to give props to Gabriel. It could have been a lot worse without
100%. 100%. And I mean, like, to build on that point in terms of the worst performers, Raya's got to get in there just because he let 007 score, which stinks. Because that, like, I mean, I don't mind if Mudryk scores like an absolute banger and he puts it like top corner, whatever. Let him earn a goal. But you've literally just gifted him one because you're trying to be aggressive and like own your area. And I get it, being aggressive and trying to own your area is important, but like, it can't be like that, right? Like, you've got to at least cover your bases. I'd prefer that you stay closer to your line and, you know, give somebody an opportunity to header the ball than for you to just get like plonked it, like get a ball plonked straight past you looking like a muppet, like, you know, on the floor. So that was shocking. And I think Raya's got to be in that conversation. Like, about, I think 2-3 minutes after that, he misplaced a pass that could have gone absolutely baps up as well. So from that point of view, Raya's definitely in that conversation. Zinchenko's in that conversation again, but I think Zinchenko, and here's like an argument I'll make for Odegaard as well, because I know that you're going to chat breeze about Odegaard, right? But Odegaard and Zinchenko, I'm sorry to say this, and maybe some Arsenal fans out there might disagree, but they're very Ozil-like, right? And this is the thing, maybe they're not quite as extreme as Ozil, but Ozil was a very, very, very good one-dimensional player, right? He was extremely one-dimensional in the fact that, like, if you played any other system that wasn't perfectly built for him, he was going to go missing and you wouldn't see him very frequently. But if you built the right system around him, he was, like, absolutely world-class. And he would make that system look unbelievably good. And I think less so for Odegaard, more so for Zinchenko. They're both a little one-dimensional at this point in their development, right? And I know Zinchenko's obviously a bit older, so you'd hope he would have developed more by now. But I think Zinchenko is a luxury player when you've got the right kind of style. If the opposition is letting you play the way that you want to play, Zinchenko offers you a lot, right? Like, he gets in between the lines, between the defense and the midfield. He gets time on the ball, or he creates time on the ball where he can put in these beautiful passes, these kind of line breaking passes to start building up phases of play that are, you know, ending goals for us. But if you don't give him time on the ball, if you kind of hound him, he's not press resistant. Like, he will lose the ball quite frequently. if you kind of put that pressure on him, he will misplace passes because he's trying to be quite aggressive. And as a result, his main weakness or his main strength becomes a weakness. And we know that his main weakness is defending. So, like, once he hasn't got the attacking threat, like, what else do you really get from him? And then he just looks what you'd expect him to look like if he doesn't have the ball at his feet, which is not very effective, a bit useless. And that's where hooking him at half time, good idea, because he clearly wasn't being effective. That wasn't the right kind of player to be playing in that position. And at least Arteta saw that and was like, all right, maybe we need to change this up a little bit. So obviously Zinchenko's got to be one of the worst performers to be getting hooked at half time like that, right? But Odegaard, I'm not going to have the Odegaard slander. I know, obviously, in that game, he didn't get, he wasn't lighting the world on fire. But again, he is somewhat of a system type player, right? Like, if you get him in the right system, he looks class. And maybe that's my criticism of him, is that he just needs to develop a couple of different ways to play, or he needs to read the game a bit quicker to say, oh, crap, I'm not going to get the opportunities that I need to get in order for me to play the way that I want to play. So instead, I'm going to adjust. I'm going to play a little bit different. I've got something else in my bag that I can pull out when things aren't going to plan. And so that's going to be my main criticism of him, is that he could be a bit better in that department, right? He needs to adapt quicker, and he needs to have the skills in his bag to be able to adapt and actually be good. But if we're going to talk about this, oh, he's gone missing again, shut it. That's absolute. I'm not having that he's gone missing again. He was still the captain of the team. We ended up coming back from 2-0 down, right? Like, he's got to take some credit for his leadership skills as well. He's got to take some credit for, the ability for us to get something out of a game that we probably shouldn't have got anything out of, right? And I just want to point out, Bruno Fernandes, De Bruyne, Maddison, if you want to try and chuck him in that conversation now, they don't always play well. I don't know where we got this from, that we think that Odegaard, Bruno Fernandes, Maddison, or De Bruyne are going to have stormers every single game. And the fact that we think that that is what is required from a player these days is nuts. Like, Haaland doesn't have like amazing games every game, right? He's had a bit of a shaky patch the last few games. I know he's built up, obviously, a really good portfolio of goals from last season and broken bare records, and I get that, and he's in contention for Ballon d'Or. But Odegaard's built up a good portfolio of really good performances last season too. He's been good in at least a couple of our games this season so far. He's been pretty critical to the leadership style and getting us out of difficult situations. So why is it that we're like, oh, he has to be like a 9 out of 10 every single game? And if he's not, then he's shit. Like, where does that come from? Like,
let's get into that question then, because that is one of the questions I do have around the game. There's a couple that I think we can talk about after as well, because I think you mentioned Raya as well, and I think we do have to touch on that, because that's obviously another big question of the game. But the Odegaard question has come up, and I think you have covered a lot of fair answers, or not excuses, because they're valid reasons why you could defend Odegaard in this game. Because I do agree, from a captain perspective and from a leadership perspective, I certainly don't think he's gone missing in any of the big games recently, right? You haven't lost. You've shown either comeback qualities or had, a period of the game where you fought back and got through some adversity, and you would hope to believe your captain contributes to that, right? It's inevitable they would. So I don't think he's gone missing from that perspective. But I do think there is some credence to the argument that this season so far, he hasn't really looked his creative self, right? And I think when we go back to last season, Odegaard, a big criticism I used to see from Arsenal fans was he would like look for the extra pass instead of shooting, right? I remember this, and even we've talked about it, I'm sure, where he would get to that space on the edge of the box, and sometimes you'd want him to just strike it and go for goal and try and finish it, and he would always look for an extra pass. Last season, I think he actually showed development where you saw he got to those positions and he would shoot, he would score, and you saw his goal tally was quite high, higher than it had certainly been in previous seasons for Arsenal, and even Madrid, Sociedad, and other places that he played before. But it seems to just be that he just lacks that bit of edge. And I do think you're right. It probably does have something to do with the system. Obviously, Arteta's played around with it this season, right? He's not playing in the same midfield dynamic that he had last season. and maybe that's affecting him. But there definitely is a distinct lack of creativity compared to his performances last season. And in the bigger games, I don't know if we need to give more credit to the opposition teams, right? Last season, I'm not going to say he was an unknown and Arsenal was an unknown, but no one expected you guys to be title challengers. So I do think there was an element of you guys played amazingly and probably people underestimated you guys to a certain extent. And this season, people are looking at you guys and going, Arsenal are a real deal. Like I'm certainly am, right, as a United fan. And a lot of other teams are showing Arsenal a bit more respect. And therefore, who are you going to pin as someone to keep quiet in a game? Saka's high on that list. Odegaard is surely number 2. Maybe Martinelli. Those 3 are probably 3 players you'd say if you keep them quiet, we have a good chance of winning this game. Do you think it is that? Do you think it purely is we're being too harsh on Odegaard? Because I agree with you. Other big players have... De Bruyne is not perfect every game, although he is good in most of them. I think that's why people say he's the best, right? He has a higher consistency than the rest. Bruno certainly gets that criticism all the time that he doesn't show up in big games, although he has had big games where he has shown up, but he's also had a lot where he hasn't. Maddison, I feel like, is a moot point because he's new on the scene, right? Tottenham fans can try and get on us, but he's got a 9-game window of proof. Before that, he was playing for Leicester and they were pretty shite. So do you honestly think there's nothing that Odegaard, you could see a difference in his performance from this season to last season, or is this creativity thing just made up?
Let me ask you a question. Can you see a difference in the Arsenal performance versus last season?
Yeah, definitely.
Are we better or worse?
Your attack is definitely way worse than it was last season.
Exactly.
And I just mean from a creativity standpoint. I don't mean you're still scoring some goals. There's still goals, right? It wasn't 0-0. You're not sneaking a 1-0 here and there. You're scoring goals, but they aren't coming from the same kind of moves and the same kind of fluid attack that you had last season. And Odegaard, if you look at his stats are way down.
They're not way down. I'm looking at them right now. They're not
his
way
creativity
down.
Stats.
So last season he did 14 big chances created. So far this season he's got 3, right? So 14 in the whole Premier League, right? All of the games that he played, right? He's got 3 goals and 1 assist so far, right? In terms of his goals per match, he's down a little bit, right? From 0.41 to 0.33, whatever, right? His passes per match are about the same. But I've got to ask you, right? It's a chicken and egg scenario, right? Is he worse because as a team we're performing worse? Or is as a team we are worse because he is performing worse? And this is where you've got to bring up other players, right? Like Saka. A lot of people are telling me that, he's been worse than he was last season as well, right? So
I don't think so.
We have no. Loads of people don't chat breeze. Loads of people have been like, "Oh yeah, he's gone missing
maybe
again. He hasn't done this, hasn't done that." So. I've heard it from loads of people, right? All of the rival fans that want to try and create a problem at Arsenal. Those are the 2 players that they're picking on, right? Odegaard and Saka, because they're the ones, obviously, that are going to get the most of the slack if we're not performing, or they're going to get most of the flack if we're not performing well. And I've got to say, the question is, last season it was a surprise, right? We came out, played the way that we played, and people were shocked. They were trying to come out and play their own football against us, and we were battering them. This season, people have seen that and be like, all right, you know what? We're going to change up. We know how Arsenal are going to play now. We're not going to give them time. We're going to sit back. We're going to do whatever. We're going to try and make them break us down. So that's my main criticism. Odegaard has not been significantly worse, right? Because if you're going to say significantly worse, you have to compare them. Are they playing against the same kind of players? Are they playing against the same kind of system? Are they surrounded by the same level of performances from their players, like from their teammates? And the answer to all those questions is no. People have adapted, and that's my criticism of Odegaard is he needs to adapt quicker. He needs to figure out, everyone's completely changed the way that they want to play against us now, and they're not going to give me the time and space that I usually want to be able to be good. So the different story it's a different story to say Odegaard's worse, like Odegaard's crap now. He's overrated, whatever this, whatever that. No, he just needs to adapt to a new type of playing. And this is my criticism of Arteta a lot, is Arteta hasn't really shown us that he's got more than one style either, right? He's got one style that he likes. If you give him the opportunity to do that, he'll batter you. And if you don't do that, if you don't give him the opportunity to do that, we look impotent, right? We can't really do very much. We're having to rely on like really gritty moments now from Rice and from Trossard and whoever else to try and get us out of holes. But I think I'm going to start from the manager. Manager's got to figure out another way to play. We have to figure out another way to play. And maybe that is understanding maybe we can't play Zinchenko. Maybe Rice has to go further up the pitch to support Odegaard. Maybe we have to play Partey in a DM role. Who knows? But he has to figure that out. And so I don't want to deflect it away from Odegaard. If you look purely at stats, yes, he is down. Not significantly down, but he's down on what he did last season. Sure. But I think it's not entirely his fault. And I think it's not necessarily a question of his quality. Because I don't think you compare this season and last season accurately to each other based off of the way that teams have been playing against us this season.
Yeah, I don't think you can put all the fault on him. When I say that his numbers are down and he's not performing to the same level, and in the bigger games, I think what the big comparison is, you can look at the whole season and that's fair. But I think one thing that stood out to me about Odegaard last season was in a lot of the bigger games, he turned up. And I don't mean that just on output. I mean that on actual performances. He played really well. So you think of United at home, he played really well. I think Newcastle, home and away, he played really well. I think Spurs, home and away, he played really well. I think Chelsea, home and away, he played really well. Liverpool, he played well at home. I think away, you had that weird situation where you were 2-0 up and he played really well in that period, and then you let it slip. Anfield got on you. But generally, like you can count, right? Like I've named loads of performances. In the bigger games, he's played really well. And I think in these bigger games so far, I think against United at home, I think he was pretty good. Although I think the goal was good. And I think his performance wasn't necessarily the same as some of his performances before. But I think in the 3 recent bigger game performances, I think whether it's his fault, Arteta's fault, I probably don't think it's his fault because he still wants to get on the ball. He's still trying stuff, right? It's just not coming off. But I do think there is something going on which is affecting him. And I think Saka, okay, maybe too. But like your bigger creative outlets, and you, like you just said, the goals are not coming from those moments, although Saka obviously got the assist for the second goal yesterday. So I think Saka's a bit immune to it because whether he plays well or not, he always tends to be in and around what's going on. And I think that's maybe his personality. I don't know, maybe if it's just the way the cookies crumbled, but Saka seems to still get some sort of output and be involved in things even when he's not playing necessarily well. And I don't think Arteta's worked out a system, whether it's on him, whether it's on Odegaard himself, whether it's on giving credit to the opponents, to be able to find a way beyond, like you said, that very smooth, well-oiled machine that you had last season, where he was the fulcrum of all of your good stuff. Goals, creativity, everything. Odegaard was the guy. That's why he got elevated to all these combos with some of the best, cams in the world. And I just don't think he's looked like himself. And like you said, whether it's the structure, whether it's him, whether it's the opponents we need to give more credit to, I don't think Arsenal are going to win big things if Odegaard's not firing. I think he's that important to you. If he continues and things continue to go this way, I don't see how you can do it. It's like taking a De Bruyne type figure out of City. I don't know if you have enough attacking pieces to be able to keep it going. But yeah, let's see how it goes, man. I think people are definitely going big. There's a lot of United fans going big on this because of obviously all the Bruno slander that comes from Arsenal fans.
Because everyone's trying to deflect, isn't it?
That's influences. But I do think
you've got to find a way to break down what is annoying you, which is that Arsenal are not anymore. Right, I get it. And you're going to go after him. You're going to go after Saka.
No,
you're going to go after all them players. No, I know, but I mean, this is to be expected, and this is actually a testament to how good Odegaard was last season. You lot are all trying to go at him now because there's been a slight drop off in his performances, and you're not taking into account the fact that everyone is playing differently against us, and that so far we haven't been great. Like if you look at the way that we've performed, like from the beginning of the season till now versus the same period last season, you would see a massive difference, right? And it's because no one expected that from us last season. And this is where you're going to separate the boys from the men, right? We're going to see, are Arsenal really about that life? Can they actually adjust when they need to, given the fact that everyone's kind of figured out this is how Arsenal want to play against you? And so if it comes to the end of the season and we're not, I'm going to say 1 or 2, then yeah, go ahead. Blame Arteta, blame Odegaard, blame Saka, blame whoever you want to blame. But at the end of the day, we haven't given him enough time. It's been like 8-9 games. And he has had good performances in that, right? He was outstanding against Bournemouth. I know it's not a big game necessarily, but he was outstanding against Bournemouth when we won 4-0. He was outstanding against PSV when we won, right? Like he was good against you guys. As much as you want to say he didn't have the best performance, he did have I think he got like a 7.5 for his performance against you lot. Against Man City, he had like a 7, like a low 7s, I think, performance. So he's not having like outstanding games where he's taking over the match, but he's not having clangers in these big games either. Right, like the game against Chelsea, yes, he wasn't good, but there were very few players in that team that were good. So if we just want to like deflect towards Odegaard, that's fine. But let's just dress it up how it actually is, which is you lot are trying to find something wrong, and you go into the captain, the players that were best last season, right?
Well, yeah, I kind of agree with you. There is a lot of an element of that from some fans. They're looking for. They're looking for something, but it's also they're not looking hard. Like I would disagree with you. I think he wasn't good yesterday. I think he was quite poor. I think against City he was quite poor. I think against Spurs he was very poor. I think against Man United he was. You could say a 7. There was the goal there that was very good. And I don't think he was bad. I think he was just okay. Like I don't think he was amazing. He wasn't certainly anything that drove you to win that game. I think Rice and some other players were the things that drove you to win the game. But I do think it's fair that you've got to hold a lot of the same energy to these big players. If you want to put them on big player brackets in terms of being top of the league or one of the best players in their position in the league, those players generally have big moments against the big teams. And even he did last season. That's why he was elevated to that position, right? Whether he's able to maintain it or whether people are going to start finding him out, that's something that a lot of these big players had. When Bruno came in, you mentioned him first, and he had those amazing stats in the first season, and he was scoring all these goals and doing all these things.
Yeah, a lot of penalties.
Then yeah, all right, that's always your excuse. But then the second season, people started to play him differently, and his numbers dropped massively. And then all the slander came. I understand it. Aesthetically, Bruno is a lot worse to look at than Odegaard. Odegaard has nice touches. He's much more fluid. Bruno is a lot more hoofball, janky, tries all these crazy, outrageous things. A lot of the time they come off. A lot of the time they don't come off. So it's a different conversation, but you still have to look at those top players with the same analytical analysis and say, did they play well? We're holding them to a high standard now. Of course, Odegaard's going to get it. You're not going to get it for, let's say, George, like even Gabriel, right? I don't think people give Gabriel the same like strict analysis that they would for Odegaard, because I think they should, because I think he's one of your better players. But you're going to look at Odegaard, you're going to look at Saka. I don't know who.
And we're saying strict analysis as if any of these people are doing actual strict analysis. But I haven't heard any evidence of the things that they're talking about. They just say, "Oh, he didn't score. He didn't get an assist in a big game, so he was shit." Like that.
No, but it's not.
We're acting like if I see someone actually give me a decent argument to say like he's been down on, all of these different stats. He's had clangers here, and here. Here's what he hasn't done. Then fair enough, right? And even then, I've already admitted that some parts of his game have been worse this season. But the fact that everyone's saying significant drop off, you're all overdoing it. You're overdoing it massively.
It's the performances, but I get it. Like if you look at it, and if I understand, you're going to have your players back, right? And the stats are not going to show a massive drop off. Also, you're right; it's very early. So really, you can't tell if there's a massive drop-off yet. It's been 9 games, right? Stats-wise. But from the eyes, looking at how he's performing, he hasn't played very well in these big games. And he did play very well in these big games. So it's going early, and people are throwing that claim out there. But you're going to get that, because if you put him at that level and he put himself at that level, you're going to get the scrutiny. And I'm not coming at the captain angle. It's got nothing to do with that, because I said earlier, I think captain-wise, you've got to give him credit for some of these comebacks and fightbacks you've had. So I don't think it's a personality thing. I don't think it's a captaincy thing. I just think he's not being and looking as creative as he was last season. Is it him? Is it Arteta? Is it the system? Is it the opposition? I don't know. But if he wants to be up there in the long term with the KDBs and these guys that, he was on the same pedestal with last season, he's got to figure it out. Because this trend...
Prisoner of the moment type of BS again.
All right, don't be too defensive. Let's move on to the next
I'm not.
player.
I've said it multiple times. When players are crap, they're crap. Right? I don't care about if they're an Arsenal player or if they're not. Right? Like Saka was crap earlier this season, and he's getting run into the ground. There are reasons for being crap, but everyone's like just overdoing it. That he's been like significant, like he's turned into Jorginho or something.
He's definitely not Jorginho, and I think it will come out in the wash. I think he'll turn it around, and like his performances will get better, and he'll reach a higher level like he has last season. Because I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's a very, very, very good player, and I think putting him up there is a bit premature. But I get it because he was so good last season, and he will come back, I'm sure. But I do think it's an interesting one, and I think people are obviously gone a bit early. Some people have gone with more vim on it. But yeah, let's see how it turns out. Let's look at the Raya one then, because that's another one that might get you riled up, but in the other way. Because, Gary Neville's obviously been going so big every time Raya's been a bit shaky on comms.
Man's just made out that compensating out here.
He's acted like he's the resurrection of Massimo Taibbi every time he touches the ball. He's like,
he's doing the Onana pensation out here is what we're going to call it from now on.
Exactly. But Onana's trending the other way. He looked very comfy. We'll talk about him anyway later. But Raya's performance was definitely part of the goalkeeping clangers that were going on in that game against Chelsea. You obviously are a well-known Ramsdale fan.
I'm not a Ramsdale even fan, but for fuck's sake.
Jonty Ramsdale.
Ramsdale's number one fan out here. No,
number one fan is Lee Judges from AFTV, and God bless him, because I know why. He's been holidaying with him in Dubai and all that. But you're close up there. Do you think Raya's shaky performances, because even as much as Gary Neville's been hyping it, he has been quite shaky. I don't think you can deny that.
Yeah,
right?
no, he has.
Do you think it's time? Do you think it's time now to bring Ramsdale in and give him a bit of a break and do what Arteta actually said he was going to do and rotate them, or do you think you've got to persevere with this Raya thing now?
Here's the deal, right? So it's all about how much it disrupts the team, right? Like to be honest with you, at this point in time, the difference between the two of them is not gigantic, right? Whether it's in Raya's favour or in Ramsdale's favour, it's not a huge gap between them in terms of quality, right? So now what I'm thinking about is how do we protect the team from the media circus that goes on around this whole kind of goalkeeping situation when we're swapping people in and out. We've had some difficult games recently, and Raya has somehow come out of it like relatively unscathed in terms of like letting in actual like goal losing matches from his mistakes, right? We've now got like Sheffield United coming up next. Don't make the media circus about Ramsdale now by switching them out. Just leave Raya in. And I know that I was saying before, like I wouldn't change them up too much. But even then, I didn't even say that. I just said I don't think Raya coming in for a couple of games was going to be forever now. I was clearly wrong about that, right? Because he's been playing almost non-stop. Right? I think he got only one game. Ramsdale got in during like the
League Cup,
European, the League Cup game, right? So I was clearly wrong about that. But now my priority is to not disrupt the team, and I think the way that you do that is you leave Raya in, you hope that it dies down, and you only act if it gets to a point where he is really causing us to lose games. So if he comes out in the Sheffield United game and kicks one top corner of his own net, then fine, we can have the conversation. But at this point, he hasn't been bad enough necessarily in the league to warrant just swapping him in and out like that. Like I've seen so many pundits like, oh, you can't do that to a goalkeeper. It's a different kind of position. It's a different kind of position. You can't swap them. You can't do what Pep kind of wants to do, right? So let's keep that same energy, right? Raya was in now. He's been in for the last 6-7 games. We can't have them swapping around. Or maybe we can now that it's an English guy that's coming in. Who knows? Who knows what the media is going to say about it? But he should keep him in net until he really makes a dog's dinner or something.
He's trying.
I'm sorry to say that. I'm sorry to say that, Ramsdale, because I do like you. I think you. It's kind of harsh that we tried to replace one of our better positions from last season, but he's still offering good things in terms of his passing. Like obviously he's not as accurate as he was last season, and you've got to give it time to gel, right? And I think maybe he needs a small settling in period. Who knows? But I don't know how you feel about it. You're probably loving the media circus around it, and you probably want him to stay in goal for as long as possible so Gary Neville can chat out his ass some more.
No, I don't actually. I was on. I was on. If we put the same exaggerated stance that I put on you, I was on Team Raya at the beginning. I was like, I think he's a slightly better goalie. Stats show that he obviously did really well for Brentford, and yeah, I thought, okay, it's a bit strange to swap out, or go for that position to upgrade, because I think you could have upgraded in attack, for example. Where, by the way, Gabriel Jesus got life not being included on the worst performers, because he stunk it up in that game as well.
He
Was
also
poor.
got knocked out by the goalkeeper and should
Exactly.
have been given a penalty.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that point, because that's another question I had for you quickly before we go to United part. But yeah, I was Team Raya, but I've flipped and I've done the reactionary thing, but I'm sticking to it. Like I think some goalies just can't hack it, and I think the differential between Raya and Ramsdale is not. I don't think potentially it's even there. So I think just bring Ramsdale back as soon as you can, before you really get that dog's dinner, because I think he's trying his best to make that dog's dinner. And I'm not trying to buy into the Neville hype. Neville's obviously going overboard and doing whatever he's doing and doing and doing whatever the stupid commentary gags that he does. But I would bring Ramsdale in for this Champions League game coming up, and if he does well, I would keep him in going forward. And unless suddenly something drastically changes, I would go with that for the rest of the season. But yeah, obviously,
what happens if Ramsdale makes a mistake? You bring Raya back again in the next game, and we just keep swapping between two goalkeepers. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they're both not. But this is why I don't think there is a right answer. I don't think I'm clearly right and my stance is right. I think your stance could be right as well. And I think this really harkens back to. Do you remember when De Gea first came to United and he was very shaky and he was conceding goals? Not all of them were conceding to results like losses, but he was definitely letting things straight through him, and he was basically a hologram, right? There was that time we brought in that Danish Don, what was his name? Anders Lindegaard, not Lingard, Lindegaard. And he had a couple of games in net, and then he was doing well. And then, he maybe didn't put in the best performance, and they brought in De Gea when they thought he was ready. And that, I know Raya is not super young like De Gea is, but maybe that's kind of what he needs to happen. Maybe he's a little bit too shaky, a little bit too unsettled with, he's gone in the big games. He played the Spurs game, he played the City game, he played the Chelsea game. Those are big games to come in. He hasn't had the smooth run to get used to the kind of level and the pressure of Arsenal. He's really been thrown in the deep end, and I don't think it's any slight on him if he just comes out for a few games. And I think it's only fair, because I don't think really it's fair what happened to Ramsdale. I know he's had clangers, right? I'm not saying he's a perfect goalie, but this season he hasn't. I don't think, has he? I know the Fulham goal.
Opposition fans are trying to say the Fulham goal. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. A lot of opposition fans are also saying Saka was to blame for that because he gave away the ball. So I don't think he's had clangers this season. Fair enough. Last season he threw in, similar clangers to the Sanchez one and a few other ones through, the back end of the season. But I think it's only fair. You've got to give them a shot. And Raya has looked shaky, and it just depends. Like if you're a gambling man, keep him in, like you said, and just hope it pays off and it lands on red and you win. But
this is probably Arteta's both a weakness and a strength of his, is that he is stubborn as F.
These big
he just keeps playing players even when I'm just like, get this bloody brother out. Like even when. Like back end of last season when he kept playing Partey, and I was just like, get Partey off the pitch. He stinks, and he's been stinky for at least 4 or 5 games now. And he did it with Havertz earlier this season. He always does it a little bit longer than everybody wants it to, right? Yeah. So we're all like, bloody hell, get this guy out. And Arteta's like, no, we're going to keep playing him for a couple more, and then we'll get him out. To the point where I don't know if he's doing a tactic where he's just like, you know what? I'm going to play this guy. I'm going to do something bad for so long that when I actually change it and make it better, everyone's now relieved. And again, it's happy. You know what I mean? So I don't know if he's playing that game, but I still feel like he's going to keep playing Raya a little bit longer. I do think that, in my mind, Raya, you got to give him a couple more games right? And you've got to give him some easier games and let him just kind of bed in a little bit. As you just said, he's been thrown in at the deep end. And as much as I love Ramsdale, my priority is the team. And if he turns it into this circus of like swapping goalkeepers round, he's given you lot and all these Twitter dons, United Trey and them, man, more impetus and more ammunition to talk absolute breeze on the internet. So I'm hoping that Arteta is sentient of that fact and will just kind of let it go. Hopefully Arsenal will be convincing next game. And there we go. But like, if we have a shaky game next game, then I get it, because the Wolves are out anyway. If we keep playing shaky and if we're not very good, then people are going to be gunning for us regardless of whether Raya's playing or Ramsdale's playing. But I just think the next game it bloody better be a win against Sheffield United. And so why not just keep him in for that, get him a bit of confidence, hopefully get him a clean sheet and see what happens.
You've got another game before then. You've got Sevilla away.
Oh, we've got the Champions League.
That's not going to be easy. Sevilla away is not the next match that you want for shaky. That atmosphere will get ramped up. We felt it. The hair crumbled under that last season. So yeah, let's see how it goes. I mean, that's brave of you. My stance is get Rambo in. I've had enough for Raya. I don't want to hear Gary Neville make them noises anymore. All right, let's go on to the last question then. And you kind of alluded to it. First of all, this should be a quick one. Saliba's handball penalty, right? You happy with it or not? Are we going to argue the referee stuff?
No, it's obviously a penalty. Like, there's people having two different questions. Should it be a penalty, or is it a penalty based on the rules that we've got? And the answers to those two things are different, of course. Should it be a penalty based off of the rules that we've got, or is it a penalty based on the rules that we've got? Yes. His arm shouldn't be there. He had enough time to move it out of the way. It's getting in the way of the ball going where it needs to go. It's a penalty. Right? You can't use any of the arguments of like, oh, really close proximity. You can't use, oh, it came off his leg and then hit his arm. You can't use any of the box claims that they usually use to say something is or is not a penalty. It's a penalty. Does that mean I agree with the rule and the fact that that is apparently a penalty now? No, I don't. And I saw Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank trying to say, oh, that's a penalty. And then Jamie Redknapp, for once, I actually agreed with him, was like, where's he supposed to put his arm? Or how's he supposed to jump? And Hasselbank's answer was, just don't jump like that. So it's just like, it's absolute breeze. Like, what? How are you supposed to jump then? Get me like a bloody body mechanics expert and tell me, how does a person jump and why do they jump like that? And what is reasonable to do when you're jumping? Not Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank telling me, oh, but you're not allowed to jump like that. Whatever you do, just don't jump like that. It's like, get out. You don't have to go home, but you just got to get the fuck out of my house. It's that kind of bollocks. Like, no. So the rule is stupid, but that's great implementation of a stupid rule. All right?
Yeah. Oh, man, you're going to have overtime with the editing on this one. Man's going ham on the swear words. But no, actually, I looked at that discussion the opposite way around, because I looked at it with the lens that you just said. By the rules, is it a pen? And Hasselbank was saying yes. And then Jamie Redknapp was arguing the other side, which was, should it be? Is it fair? Is the rule legit? Whatever. Which I agree with his premise, but why are you arguing, bro? That rule is crystal clear. It's a fucking penalty, mate. Why are you trying to bring up this stupid debate? And you could see Kelly Dalglish, I forgot what her last name is now since she's married, was just like, Jamie, come on, mate. Like, can we just move on, you stupid twat? Let's stop this conversation. It's obviously a penalty. That's the rules. Let's not get into this bloody bag again. Let's just move on, right? And fair enough, Jimmy Hasselbank was just trying to dead it. I don't think he wanted to go into it. That's why he was just, saying that, just don't do it that way, because it was straightforward, man. You saw it the Liverpool game early in the day. You saw it in the United game later in the day. That's a handball. It's a penalty. The rule is shit. But if they're going to implement it, at least do it consistently. No more Garnachos at Spurs, please. Can we just all have it the same result, and we can handle it, right? The next one, though, is the Robert Sanchez Superman punch on Jesus. Now, I'm going to get a bit moany on this. Right? That is a penalty, and everyone gave Onana his absolute crucifixion when he did that to the Wolves Don. I have not heard one bloody person talk about this. Sanchez took out about 7 guys. Onana took out one massive guy, and everyone was hammering him. Howard Webb came out with his stupid shiny head and started saying it was a big mistake, and everyone was hammering that bloody decision over and over and over and over again. This one is even more clear. and I don't think anyone said anything about it. So
No.
surely you're saying that's a pen, right? He's
It
taken
is a
everyone
pen,
out.
but here's the thing, like, so with the handball, I know what I think I know what the rule is. I don't even know what the rule is. Can the goalkeeper just come out and punch, man? Is that just the rule?
No,
Maybe that's the rule because Onana didn't get it against
no.
him, right? You're
Yeah,
like
but Howard
Sanchez ain't
Webb
getting
came
it
out
either.
after. No,
And
but
what
Howard
so
Webb came out after and said that was wrong. The rule is that should have been a penalty,
also
but they
then
haven't given it
then
again.
in that case that's a penalty, right? He's punched man
It
in the
is.
head. He's knocked Gabby Jesus spark out, bro. I felt like I was watching
He was-
influencer boxing, seeing man just Superman punch each other, right? That was
Salt
that was a
Pappy knocked
pen.
out.
Exactly, that was a Salt Pappy Slim. He's just knocking Gabby Jesus spark out along with his own defender. So if that's the case, right, he should that is a pen, right?
Yeah.
And another thing is, you want to chat all this, Breeze? Everybody's chatting about dangerous play this, dangerous play that. It's a red card now if it's dangerous play. What does the word dangerous mean? Because in my books, if you punch man in the head, it's dangerous. Right? So if you go into the back of someone's leg, apparently that's dangerous. But if you knock man spark out, it's not dangerous. So that's not a red card either. What? Honestly, I'm just the implementation, or I don't even know, like if this the implementation or just the rules that have been created and the wording that they use to explain those rules is just absolutely shit. Because if that's not, if Howard Webb's come out and said you're not supposed to be able to do that, and then they've just let Sanchez do it, then I give up. Right? They get the penalty thing right finally, right? The implementation of the rule, they get it right. Great, and then they just go and ruin it. They go and ruin it the other side. God, mate, we need to ship all of these lot out. Stick them on a barge and send them somewhere else because these referees are absolutely shocking.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I like you said, for the handball one, it was good to see consistency throughout the day. For that one, it was infuriating. And then it was even more infuriating seeing no one talk about it. It's like, have I lost my marbles? And I saw, what was it? Gabby Agbonlahor, that stupid creator face prick on TalkSport, was literally saying it was completely different. It was the same, you band. Like, he literally, I swear to God, he just wants to go on the radio to get clicks and start getting TalkSport some traction.
What's his agenda?
Talking about United. I don't know why.
Is he a Chelsea
we've
fan
never
secretly
cared.
or what?
No,
like,
no. It's always against United. It's not about
No.
you. He's always going the opposite side to United, and I don't know why. I think it's maybe because Roy Keane was one time his manager and probably said he was a piece of shit or something, and now he hates United off the back of it. Because none of us care about Gabby Bonlaw, right? I've never thought twice about him. I thought he was a pretty shit player, and he's even a pundit. So I never thought about him twice. But he just seems to be coming for us all
he's
the time.
a streets will forget baller.
Exactly. Streets will forget him. But anyway, let's move on. I think we've done enough on bloody Arsenal Chelsea for such a pretty drab match. We've chatted about it forever. Let's get on to an even worse game. Sheffield United 1, Man United 2.
United.
What did you What did you think of the game? First of all, did you love it?
It was all right. I mean, mate, the scenes when Scott McTominay scores again. God, when that happens, you just think, what is going on in the world today when Scott McTominay is the savior of United again? And then he goes down the other end and handballs it, and then you're like, all right, back to normal. The world is good.
What was again. The message that was? What was the messages I was sending you? McSauce. Oh, you did it.
It's like that Roy Hodgson meme. It's the Roy Hodgson meme where he gets all excited and then he's just
Oh mate, yeah, it was an interesting match. I have to run back some of my claims because you're going to call me out on them in a bit. But yeah, we didn't play that well, man. To be honest, we didn't play that well. I don't think we were terrible either. I think in the second half we had a lot of the ball. They didn't really have a sniff. We hit the bar a couple of times, the post. But it wasn't one of those games where it felt like the goal was always coming. It really did need a Delo wonder strike / maybe Fotheringham could have done better to win it. But I don't think it was a smash and grab. I don't think it was unfair that we won. I thought we were the better team, and we definitely deserved to win. It just wasn't an aesthetically pleasing game, and it's another game where Harry Maguire's putting his big head on things. Scott McTominay scoring. It's not what Ten Hag wants. You can tell this is not what Ten Hag wants. So with every game that goes that way, you know, it feels like Ten Hag losing his grip on the team a little bit, and we're edging further away from where we need to be. But yeah, it would be good to get your take on who you think the best and worst performers were. I don't think it's really going to be too controversial.
Yeah, I mean, like best performers. I really don't know like who, because I would have said McTominay until he gave the penalty away. And I'm loath to give Maguire any kind of best performer award ever. So it's not him. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Delo for just smashing one top corner. Amrabat wasn't bad.
No, Delo was steady as well though. And what I will say about Delo is in the last few games, he's been very steady. The problem with him is he's had really memeable, clippable moments. So the Jesus moment, obviously, sending him to the multiverse. Then you also had Zaha just absolutely stiff shouldering him to death in the Galatasaray game, which made him look terrible. So he's had terrible like standout moments, but actually his overall performances have been generally very good, and his defensive work is actually something that's impressed me. He's clearly been working on that. You know how everyone was giving Wan-Bissaka praise for improving his attacking? I think Delo deserves a bit of love for his defensive work. He's definitely got a lot better defensively, but there weren't, a huge array of people to really put in the best performers or even the worst performers. I was struggling really thinking about the worst performance. I think everyone was kind of a 6. I think Bruno didn't play that well. Rashford wasn't amazing. Antony didn't really do much, but they weren't abysmal. They were all about a 6 out of 10. And they didn't play that poorly and they didn't play that well. And so I don't really know how to read that. Like, is it better to have a bunch of people who do really well and a few people who play quite poorly? Or is it better to have everyone at a 6 or 7 out of 10? I don't know. But yeah, I think that was quite hard to judge. So yeah, chuck your questions at me, mate. What do you want to ask me off the back of this game?
Well, I mean, I've got a couple. I just want to call you out for your claim last week where you said, and I quote, "If you don't slap them," which you apparently defined as a 2-0 win, then you'd be buying fully into the United crisis mode. Now, my question for you is, given the fact that you've gone and got 3 points, do you still believe that? Are you still in crisis mode, or do you see something today that you didn't see a week ago that maybe gives you a bit more hope?
No, we're still in crisis mode. I don't think we're out of crisis mode. That's like, look at how I've just described that performance. Like, it wasn't. It's not a tide-turning performance. I think the victory doesn't change the feeling around the club and what we know is going on in the background as well as on the pitch. It's in turmoil. It's not out of turmoil now. We could easily, go and play Copenhagen tomorrow and lose. I don't have any confidence that can't happen. Which, if the tide was turning, I could probably say with some confidence, even if I was, doing a Lincoln against Lens and get it completely wrong, we're not laughing at him and saying that he was outrageous to think that. He was justified because you guys have been, fairly stable throughout the season and also obviously last season. So we're still on crisis mode. We still got Jadon Sancho not apologising, who's, stuck somewhere, in London clubs playing FIFA or whatever, apparently going to Turkey in January or whatever on loan or whatever. Like, it's still all over the shop. Still got Johnny Evans, Harry Maguire at centre back. Still got Lindelof at left back. Onana, I think, was pretty stable and decent, but the bar is so low for him over the last couple of weeks that he didn't have the best performance. So I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I still think we're in crisis mode. I don't think we'll be out of crisis mode probably for the whole season, to be perfectly honest with you, bro. I don't see it changing. It would need something massive to happen, I think, for us to get out of this place. I think this is how we're going to be for the rest of the season, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, like, this was not a question that I really was planning to ask you, but I will kind of stick it in here quickly. I think we have to touch on it, which is, Sheikh Jassim is apparently now fully just like he's done. He's not coming back for you lot. He might go and look at another team, but really it was all about United because he's a United fan. And it looks like Ineos is obviously going to buy a proportion of the shares available. but has some stipulations that they want to be like fully in control of what's decided on the pitch, at least from a football team perspective, not necessarily from the business perspective, but from the football team perspective. And it obviously looks like that's really your only option right now, at least, for changes or adjustments to ownership. I guess my first question to that is: do you think that will affect your on-field performances? And then, second of all, are you happy with the outcome?
So before I get into that, I realised I've committed a massive sin. I have to say R.I.P. Sir Bobby Charlton, obviously, first, before we've talked about all the United stuff, and especially before we talk about the Glazers and all their rubbish. We have to say R.I.P. to him. Absolute legend, proper ambassador, proper United man, not like these people we're about to talk about in a minute. So yeah, R.I.P. to him and his family. But yeah, I'm not really happy about it, but we kind of knew, didn't we, that this wasn't going to happen in terms of the full takeover. It took so long. It always felt like it was a bit of a rope-a-dope / the Glazers were just trying to test the waters to see what they could get. And there wasn't like a universal decision to sell the club. There was all these murmurs coming out that a couple of the Glazers didn't want to leave. A couple of the others did want to leave, and that was always going to be a big problem. Then you've also got the fact that a chunk of the club is listed on the New York Stock Exchange, so you then have all of those minority shareholders that you have to please with the takeover bid as well. So it was always looking like that was going every day that passed, it looked more and more unlikely that Qatar takeover was going to happen. So I'm not shocked. It's not the outcome that I wanted, but beggars can't be choosers. And when it comes to owners, a lot of United fans will tell people that we've got the worst owners in the world. So if we're moving one step closer away from them in that they're selling 25% of their stake in the club to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, then at this point, I can't really turn up my nose to that, to be honest. And if it does come with these stipulations that he'll be in charge or his team at Ineos will be in charge of the football operations, I would rather that happen than continue with something that has failed for 15 years. Like, there's no proof that they'll be better, but I'd rather roll the dice with them than continue with the Glazers, because we know that they don't know what they're doing, and the people that they hired are not, top of class. And what I've heard is that Paul Mitchell, the ex-Tottenham, Southampton and Monaco football director of football, has been lined up to come in if and when the Sir Jim deal goes through. And that will be a good thing, because he has proven that he's a top of class person in the football world. So I do believe something good can come from it. But yeah, I'm not really sure where it's going to go. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And when it comes to the other question about affecting the pitch, it definitely will have an impact on the pitch. Whether it will be a massive impact and uplift that everyone needs, I don't know. And I think it's going to be a slow grind, and we're in for more pain for the next couple of seasons at least, because this transition under a new director of football, under a new football operations, it won't be smooth and quick and easy. It'll definitely take time.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with you. I think obviously it's not the ideal situation. Hopefully it doesn't have a massive effect on the pitch to your results. I mean, I don't see how it could have a bigger negative effect than you've already been. So I think that
worse.
Obviously remain. What's that again?
Yeah, it can't get worse. Like, let's be honest. If you think about the impact that this takeover's had, and remember when Chelsea were going through their situation with Roman Abramovich, all the chat around how it was impacting the team and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff, which I think is logical. Like, think about what's been going on at our club and all the turmoil. And that's before you take into account the actual stuff that Ten Hag had control over, or the things that, the players had control over, like their behavior and the stuff that they've got in trouble for. Like, it's just so much going on. So it can only... The way I look at it is we've hit rock bottom for a club of our size. Like, we're not capable of doing a Chelsea, but we this is the bottom that we can hit. So I don't... We've got too much money invested, and our players are not like developmental players. We can't go lower than we are. So the only way is up. It's just how quickly we can go up is the thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think in that regard, at least you don't have like a Lampard as your manager, so that will at least stave off coming 15th. I'm hoping, or coming 13th, or whatever
Exactly.
else like that. You've got a decent manager at the top, so that he can at least affect, not absolutely shocking decisions being made all the time. But I think the next question I'll kind of get onto, and we kind of touched on this when we were talking about best performers of the game, and I said I didn't want to have to give it to Maguire, but obviously the powers that be disagreed with what I was saying, and they awarded Mr. Maguire man of the match for his performance yesterday. And on top of that, I do believe that the broadcasters continue to show a stat, I think 4 or 5 times, that was essentially showing the games that you've played with and without Maguire since October 22nd, I think you said, from last year.
22.
Yeah, October 22. And it showed obviously that Maguire had, when he was playing, United had won more games than they had lost with him in the team. So I guess my first thing is, do you think he's deserving of the man of the match performance?
I don't think we should even be talking about Maguire, and this is going to feel like bullying, especially on our platform, because I've had about 4 or 5 Maguire rants when he was actually crap. I think he was decent in that game. I think it was a game set up for his style of defending, and just getting his big head on things and kind of roughing people up. That's kind of the player that Maguire is, and I think he was decent. I think he falls in that batch that weren't terrible and that weren't absolutely tremendous, about a 6 or a 7 out of 10. And I think he deserves, if that deserves praise, then sure, give him praise. I don't think he was as bad as he has been, certainly not. But it's so obvious that, I don't know if it's the broadcasters or just the media in general or just the pundits involved in the media that just want to try and balance out the coverage that Maguire gets with some positivity. Like, they were forcing it down our throat, that stat. Like, I saw it in the morning, I saw it on their socials, I saw it 3 times during the game, pre, during, and after. I saw Jamie Redknapp waffle out of his stupid flipping fake tanned mouth about how Maguire, doesn't deserve any of this and all this rubbish, and it was so clearly trying to defend someone, I guess, that he's got a personal relationship with, or has some sort of affinity to. But it's just over the top, man. He doesn't deserve to play for United. He's not a Man U player. He doesn't play the way that Ten Hag wants to play. He doesn't play in the style that suits the way that we want to play. He's literally playing only out of necessity now because we've got about 4 other centre backs injured, and even Luke Shaw's injured, who played before him. So let's be real and let's not sugarcoat it. We don't need to go, because it's been swung far left and the pendulum's gone very far down the, kind of scapegoating, what people have called, route. We don't need to go down the other side to even it out. You can just say it and call it how it is, because I don't think he's been unfairly scapegoated. I think people have just judged him on his performances, which at times have been diabolical. They're not now, so big up for him because he's turned it around a bit. But let's not over egg the pudding, right? Let's just keep it real and honest. He's not a terrible player, and you laughed and we all joked when I said he'd be decent for West Ham, but he would. He's got a future in the Premier League. He's not a rubbish player, and people have gone overboard to say whatever they've said about him, being worse than he is. But he's not a United player, and eventually he will leave the club because it's clear that he's surplus to requirements, and he's not someone that Ten Hag sees in his long-term plan. So yeah, I just thought it was just over the top, so over the top. And I remember when players like Pogba and Martial and all these guys got some stick, and some of the time it was warranted and some of the time it wasn't. Did we see any of these guys come out and tell Souness to shut his stupid racist mouth? No one ever did that. They just let him waffle and absolutely bash these players. But when it's Harry Maguire and he's our own lad from Sheffield, we'll support him. It's just so plainly obvious. Like, give it up, man. We're on to you. Just move on to something else. There's no need to drag out that coverage. They could have ended it 10 minutes earlier instead of waffling that rubbish, to be honest. It was It's not a game to even get involved in the Maguire chat. He was decent, but I don't think he was man of the match, and I don't think he deserved to get all of that kind of defence that he got on the broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree with you more in the fact that I think what's really bugging me really is just the fact that the support to him is just clearly one-sided, right? Like as you've said before, we've had plenty of foreign players that have come into the league and unfortunately got caught up in kind of the Man United machine, which has been around for the last few years, where they just get kind of drawn into every single bad thing that happens at the club is their fault, right? It's kind of like the Souness meme where, where was Pogba and all of this kind of thing, right? And obviously what has happened is, because you are like one of the most followed teams in the world, and because you always have so much scrutiny on you at all times, and because obviously your leadership hasn't done the best job of trying to get eyes off of you and just trying to keep it to a football type of thing, Maguire probably has got some unfair stick over the years, right? People are going to talk down on him, and they are going to give the same kind of energy that they gave to Pogba in terms of like blaming everything on him. And the fan base is going to do that. That's just typically what fan bases tend to do, especially when you've got the amplification of social media kind of combined with it. But as you rightly said, the pundits were never coming out to defend any of those players in the past, and they've suddenly brought it upon themselves to do that for Maguire, right? And maybe my point here is not that they shouldn't do it for Maguire, but that they should keep the same energy with everyone else too. And I'd like to see, some of these pundits and some of these kind of broadcasters start putting the mental health thing into the conversation for all footballers, right? Not just English ones, but others too. Because, whether you're from France, Nigeria, bloody South America, like Venezuela or something, it doesn't matter. You all feel the same kind of pressure on you. And it kind of stinks that we've only decided for Maguire to humanize him, to say, oh, he's a player, he shouldn't get all this stick, it's not all his fault, blah, 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 blah. But they never thought that about anyone else. And that's probably the part of it that most stinks to me out of all of this.
Yeah, why is he different? This is what I don't get. Why is he different than those other players that we mentioned? And like you said, there was those news reports of that Nice player that was, had to be rescued because he was in deep mental health crisis and about to jump off a bridge or something like that. And this is not something that solely affects our British players.
Yep.
It affects every single footballer, whether they're in the men's game, the women's game, youth football. It's a big, big issue, even outside of football. So I just don't get it. It gets highlighted for certain people and it just gets completely ignored, and there's no empathy for certain other players. And yeah, the Maguire thing is I'm just blue in the face talking about it. And this game was the best example. He had no business being involved in the post-match chat. He was decent, but not spectacular. Yeah, he's given man of the match, and people are out here defending him like, there were pitchforks outside his house. It was ridiculous. And
exactly when De Gea was getting it left, right, and centre, when Onana's been getting it, despite Onana coming out and showing really good character despite his performances, ain't anyone saying anything. And
no,
I would argue both of those players are far more deserving of some defence than Maguire's been so far, based off of their career, particularly De Gea, who was a very loyal servant to your club for a very long time.
He's a United legend, yeah.
Exactly, and very few then pundits were just trying to come out and saying it. And that's where like it also stinks of like, oh, he's my friend, so I'll defend him. Whereas, yeah, for some of the foreign players, maybe they're not friends with them because the foreign players are like, I don't know who Jamie Redknapp is. Like, who's this geezer? He didn't do anything. Why would I care about what this guy thinks? And so it just stinks as well of like, oh, he's my mate. I've seen him down, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium every now and then, so I'm going to defend him. Like, come on, man. That's why, like, I need less Jamie Redknapp on broadcasts. Get me a bit more Patrice Evra, get me some more foreign influence on the broadcast as well, because maybe they'll actually be able to give us some understanding of what it feels like to come to the Premier League, where you maybe don't speak the same language, and to get absolutely battered by everyone all the time. I think honestly, that's why fair.
When Sky had, as much as I didn't rate him at the time as a pundit, it was actually better when they had Thierry Henry there, as a full-time studio pundit, because you had Gary Neville, you had Jamie Carragher covering those other clubs, but also, the other sides of the country. And then you had Thierry Henry there, probably arguably the greatest Premier League player that we've seen, or at least in the top three for sure. And he's got all of those, he's got every single angle you could imagine. He was having a tough time at the beginning. He got a lot of flack. He was a big money signing at the time, turned it around, was unbelievable. And he can relate to a lot of these foreign players, and he'll bring a bit of fairness to certain conversations that go down these unfair routes, over and over again. But yeah, I guess that, there's reasons why he's not on the broadcast, and there's reasons why they fill it with, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank and certain other people instead. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the next part really is about probably a player that's had similar-ish levels of flack at times, not the whole time, sustaining, and that is obviously Scott McTominay. And he's done it again. He's gone out and scored. It wasn't a pretty goal. I've got to say, he doesn't score too many pretty goals when he does score, but he somehow shoves it into the back of the net. And he's obviously gone ahead and got the goal. He's then immediately given a penalty away. But an interesting stat that you were telling me about, and that we were kind of discussing previously, was that throughout the 90 minutes, he had a grand total of 9 passes. Throughout the 90-minute game, he had 9 passes. And so I guess Scott McTominay really is an interesting character, an interesting player to talk about. So I guess, how do you get the best out of him? Because he's clearly got something to offer. Just what is it? And how do you get it out of it?
Well, it's obvious that he affects the attacking third of the pitch. And so you can't play him in central or deeper midfield role. Because the 9 passes tells you he either is scared of the ball, can't pass it, or is somehow allergic to the ball, and it just will never come to him. Because if Onana's having 4 times the passes you had, Rashford, who's a very attacking, direct, inside forward who doesn't generally like to pass, has 3.5 times
is quite selfish.
the balls. He has 3.5 times the passes you have. Basically, everyone on the team is at least double, triple your passes in all sorts of positions. There's a problem. And this is a trending issue with McSauce, because I will put respect on his name and give him that nickname, because he scores up, so many goals for us now, and they're pretty important ones. But he just doesn't affect the game in the way that he's being deployed. So if you put him up and you say, against Brentford, let's chuck on McSauce, let's start doing some, Stoke aerial tactics for the last 10, 15 minutes, it'll probably be pretty effective for you. And that Brentford game showed you that. And other games, similar games, he's had a similar impact. But if you want to play him in a defensive midfield or midfield pivot, you can't have 9 passes. You can't. I feel like I would have more passes in a 5-a-side game that's 5 minutes long. There's no way you can have 9 passes. And it's just not acceptable for a player in that position. So it's not a slight on him. It's clearly he's been miscategorized and misprofiled, and we're playing him in the wrong position. And unfortunately, and I said this to you in a separate thread about Amrabat and Casemiro, the amount of times we buy a midfielder and he turns out being a different type of midfielder than the one that we thought he was going to be, it's happened too many times. Because everyone says Amrabat's a bruiser. He's not a bruiser. He's literally like a deep-lying playmaker. All right, he's got energy and he runs up and down the field. But if you've seen him in 50-50s, he's not got that weight to him where he's going to come and do a big, tackle or a vicious 50-50 challenge. He's a lot more about getting the ball down and trying to play it through the thirds and play incisive passing, which I'm glad about. But a lot of United fans thought he was a bruiser. They thought him and Casemiro were going to be our, Vinnie Jones and Graham Souness in midfield, and they're not like that. Even Casemiro, he's actually decent on the ball and he's cropped up with loads of goals, and that defensive side has actually probably been his weakest part of his game. So think about that. That's 3 midfielders I've just named now that we play in central midfield that really, based on their performances and based on their attributes at this current moment, aren't suited to playing there. So I agree now. At the beginning, I was saying get Maguire out, get McSauce out. They're useless. They don't deserve to play for us, and clearly not part of our plans. In a way that the media is trying to say Maguire's forced his way into the team, I would disagree. But for McSauce, I would argue that he has done a lot to get into the team. My question is where? I don't know either because he can't play in Bruno's position. I know you said that jokingly, but he might score goals occasionally from a more attacking position like that. But he's never going to create any of the chances that Bruno does. And you could argue Bruno's been poor recently, but he still creates chances. So you need to have a creative chance creator in that position. You can't have him. But I would argue take Højlund off after 70, 80 minutes if he's not doing as well, and stick McTominay as the focal point and just hoof the ball up to him as like a bit of a Chris Wood character.
He could. I mean, Chris Wood did well this weekend, by the way. But
I know, exactly.
But yeah, you could have. Maybe he's going to create his own position of a target man centre mid. Like I don't know what he's doing, but he's creating his own position out here. Where you've got a centre mid that is just like David
CM.
James. Yeah, full CM, exactly. Yeah, he's bloody playing like Heskey of the centre mid position. It's a strange phenomenon to see.
He's a conundrum. He's a conundrum player, man. It's honestly, I don't know what to say about him. All I know is you have to put a bit of respect on him, and I can't be disrespectful and say he's useless because he has got something he can do. Like he's proven it for us and for Scotland. I just don't know how you can play a formation that suits what he does. It's just, it doesn't make sense. So
yeah, he does have like a very Suarez like finishing ability where he just like somehow can just shin it into the top corner, or like
it goes off all parts of his body. Yeah.
This is like, and this is a big shout, and everyone can call me out, but like it's reminding me of a lot of the goals that Bellingham has scored this season as well, because like he's just been like shinning it, like kicking it into the ground, and somehow just turning up with goals. And I think I'm not saying that McTominay has anything of the DNA of Bellingham, but there's definitely something to be said for a goal scorer, and I don't think you can ever kind of turn your nose up at a goal scorer, even if it is in the format of a lanky built Scottish geezer. So, but anyway, we'll move on now. Just very briefly, obviously, we kind of touched on this last week. We've got the Champions League coming up now. I think we both play on Tuesday. You've got Copenhagen at home, I believe, and we've got Sevilla away. I'll start off with you. I mean, we kind of talked about Copenhagen coming to Old Trafford with probably quite a strong group of fans. Are you still as worried about that game as we kind of were last week, or do you have maybe a bit more spirit to you based off of the performance against Sheffield United?
So no real evidence, no spirit really, but I'm going to go 5-0 United. And it's really just vibes, and just I've got to roll the dice. And it's got to come up 12 at some point. You know what I mean? So I think we'll slap them 5-0. I think it'll be a Rasmus Højlund hat trick. I think McSauce will score again as well. And I think we'll give them a right hiding. And yeah, no one will see it, and everyone will act like we're back. And I don't think we will be back. But I think it's one of those games where we've just got too much on the line, and we've just got to hit someone for a spanking. And I think the poor Danes are going to get it.
That would be negative narrative XG right there. The chances of that happening are like 0.001, so that stinks.
We've got to fight it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think I'm going to stick to my prediction. I think Sevilla will beat us. I'm sorry to say, I think we will lose.
It's not looking good, bruv. It's not looking good, bruv.
I do think it will be close. But I think we will lose, unfortunately. And as you said, it's not looking very good because we've already lost once. So I don't know if that fully puts us out of the running, but I think that probably will confirm us to be probably second if we do somehow still get in. We'll probably come second if we've lost 2 games in the group stages. So who knows? Maybe that'll end up being a better draw for us in the end. You never know. But yeah, I don't see us going to Sevilla, especially after that performance against Chelsea. I don't see us going to Sevilla and like smashing them. If we do win, I think it will be a squeaky one. You know, right now, I'd love to say that we won't concede, but it just doesn't look that way. If you let in 2 goals to Chelsea, right, the bluntest attack in the world, then you know you're probably going to let in goals against Sevilla as well. So I'm going to go, just out of respect for Arsenal, I'll go 2-1 Arsenal, but I slightly do think we will lose.
Predicting defeats. What a disgrace.
Yeah,
but no, I think I actually think you guys will draw it, and I think that will be a decent result because Sevilla it's a nightmare, that stadium. It's not a fun one. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter how terrible they play. They tend to turn it on in Europe. So yeah, I think it will be a hard fought game, but I think you'll come away with at least a draw. But I wouldn't be shocked if you lost because we've gone there a couple of times and been taught a lesson. But I think you guys will have enough about you to get a draw because I don't think it will rule you out, but it'll put you in a sticky position if you lose it. I'll tell you that. You'll need to win all of your remaining games, I think, to basically go through. So it'll be hard going. What about your Arsenal Sheffield United game then on the weekend? You're playing on Saturday,
4-0.
3:00 kickoff. Man's joined Smoky Settings.
No, it's a 4-0, man. If we don't beat Sheffield United 4-0, then that's not a performance to be proud of. They stink, man. They absolutely stink. They bloody lost 2-1 to you. That is the biggest indicator of being a stinky team I've ever seen in my life. So yeah, we need a 3-0, 4-0 win, and I don't want to see a goal let in. I think that's probably the more important part. Is I want to see a bloody clean sheet. Sheffield United they're not good enough for us to be conceding a goal to them. So, and especially at home, we need to be winning that. I want to see a 4-0, Smoky Settings. Quote me next week, bruv.
All right. Yeah.
How about you against City, mate? Let's see. Is it going to be a 4-0 against City?
This is where all of the Smoky Settings are just going to straight flames have gone out. I think that it will be a tight game, though, I reckon. But I don't think we'll win. And I think we'll either draw or lose it. But I don't want to be as pessimistic as you and predict losses. So I'm going to say a 2-2 because we concede. But we've somehow found some scoring of late. So, and City's a sneaky one. I don't know if you saw that Brighton game, but they weren't fantastic.
They were not good, no.
And
they were not
Brighton
good.
At the end, I reckon if Brighton had another 10, 15 minutes, they would have equalised. So, yeah, I know we're not even Brighton at the moment. Brighton are in a decent team, but I think it won't be an absolute slapping for either team. And I wouldn't be shocked if we nicked it, but I think probably a draw or them nicking it is a much more likely result. But I'm going to go for 2-2, I reckon. And I agree. Arsenal, Sheffield United, you guys should be slapping them up silly. As we've said many a time on this pod, Sheffield United, Luton, absolutely horse teams. So we should be every team in the Prem that drops a point to them, I feel like should get a 3-point penalty because that's disgraceful.
The whole team should be put in the stocks. They should get bloody rotten tomatoes thrown at them because they absolutely.
You know when a team goes in administration, they get like a 15-point penalty. I reckon that should happen to anyone that loses points to Sheffield United or Luton, and Burnley are not far away from that either. Teams drop points to them. I'm sorry, Bournemouth even as well. My God, like those 4 teams are just smelling up to high heaven, and unfortunately I think that means Everton are going to get away with it again because I just can't see them being worse than those 4 teams. So yeah, I think you'll batter Sheffield United. I wouldn't be surprised if you did get the 4-0 or more.
Yeah, and I do think that like the game against City with you lot you're catching them at a good time, man. No De Bruyne, Akanji just got a red card. That's him out of that one. Haaland doesn't look great. It was a good finish, I will say that, against Brighton, but he hasn't looked great. Julian Alvarez didn't look great, even though, again, he scuffed one into the back of the net. He didn't look great. The only person that's been really kind of impressing me from that team is Doku. And
he looked good. He looked good. Looked really good.
But I think you've got the perfect weapon against Doku, though. You've got bloody Wan-Bissaka. He's not
He's
on Kyle
injured, though.
Walker levels. Oh, is he injured? Oh God,
He's been
All
out.
right, no,
He's
yeah,
been out
yeah.
for weeks.
I
It'll be Delo that goes up against him.
Okay, so it'll be Delo that goes up again. Maybe there's an opportunity there then. I guess. I mean, Delo has improved defensively, but yeah, that maybe he's going to be the one to cause you problems. But it will be interesting in my mind to see Højlund. I want to see Højlund up against that defense because I think Højlund obviously caused us a lot of problems when he came on in the United Arsenal game. And it'd be interesting to see what Gvardiol and what their defenders are going to have to do with Højlund backing into them 24/7, trying to grind up on them. But anyway, we'll wrap it up there. As always, a very big thank you to everybody for listening, and a big thank you to you, Ant. Come on, the All Blacks. We'll see Wagwan in that match next week as well, son.
Now, hopefully, I'll be rocking the same jersey again next week because the Bokker have taken back-to-back Rugby World Cups. But who knows? If United get 2 Ws, 2 wins, I'm beating City as well. I might have to wear one of my United kits. They might have to get the cobwebs, blown off them and get onto me again. And yeah, let's see, man. Let's see. Fingers crossed.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys.